just to set the table, Israel has just taken over the aid mechanism and seems to be moving forward towards that plan. Yet now there's a proposal on the table. And AJ, I don't think that you like it so much. So why don't you like it so much?
I greatly dislike it, and it should be worth noting that Bibi has indicated to the hostage families that he will accept it. Um, the to set the table here, the the flow of aid to Hamas via the UN as well, because there's an incestuous relationship between UNRWA and Hamas. That flow of aid has come at two great expenses to Israel in this war effort. The first is that Hamas steals the aid, resells the aid, funds itself with the aid. Um, the second is that when you have a police state or when you have an entrenched political actor, a lot of their political base, their legitimacy, their mandate comes from their popular support, comes from the administration of essential goods and services. When Hamas is removed from being able to provide those essential goods and services, and those are taken over by someone more efficient, I dare say that doesn't skim off of them in the same way that they do, um, they lose the popular support from a political perspective. Right? So when Hamas ever loses the military base support, when they get pounded into oblivion, when Gaza, when a lot of the infrastructure is destroyed in Gaza, what's left at least is the political mandate to actually govern the Strip, to say that they are representative of the government of the people. In the last couple of days, as the American contractors have taken over and people have seen an alternative route to this provision of aid and Hamas has been cut off here, Hamas has started to lose its political basis for a mandate of governance. And the people have actually, we've seen this, people have ransacked Hamas storage sites for aid, and they've seen how Hamas has stockpiled pillaged aid, stolen aid. It's really chipped away. If we could say it has brought Gaza nearer to a civil war, so to speak, on the standpoint of who is going to actually, whether Hamas retains its legitimate political authority. If the legitimate political authority drops out from Hamas, that would effectually end the war, right? Because Hamas would have to save its own skin. But the reason it's holding hostages in the first place is because they're a bargaining chip for which Hamas could give back hostages. They don't want to give back hostages because the stalemate in these negotiations is that Hamas wants to remain in power in the Strip. It enriches them. They're able to embezzle the funds. If Hamas remains in power, they'll be greatly enriched in the coming years. Every single time there's a rebuilding effort in Gaza, they steal billions of dollars. They enrich the top tier. They use a lot of the aid. They refunnel it towards building tunnels. Hamas, their only goal at the moment is to stay in the Strip as the governing faction leader of the Strip and whatever comes after this war. They're in a position now of potentially having to save their own skin, not just stay in the Strip. That might be an illegitimate path forward for them at the moment. What Witkoff is doing here, what this lifeline does, is it does two things. One is it throws them back the political legitimacy of bargaining for the people, for a ceasefire. And the second, the biggest slap in the face to Israel, is that it restores the aid provisioning to Hamas. Right, and that is a huge problem for Israel at a time that it has Hamas on the ropes. Why would you do this? I have absolutely no idea what the purpose of this would be, except to completely undermine
Also,
Israel's position.
why for me, why are there 18 deceased hostages coming out ahead of at least 10 hostages that are alive?
Oh,
It makes no sense.
well, it makes no sense to us, but it makes perfect sense to Hamas, right? Each live hostage is a living propaganda tool, right? They can create hostage videos. It tugs on the heartstrings a lot more than someone who's deceased. Hamas's biggest bargaining chips politically is retaining live hostages. So the question is not why Hamas would give them back or would give back seize hostages. The question is why someone like Witkoff would offer this. Right? Why is this a political consideration and calculation? There's a lot to say about Witkoff's motivations, his cozying up to Qatar. Here's what we do know about Witkoff. He was bailed out by the Qataris to the tune of $630 million for his Park Lane hotel a number of years ago. No one wanted to buy it. The Qataris bailed it out. The second is that his son is Zach is running around the Middle East selling crypto to
Alex,
I
or Alex or Zach?
I believe Zach. I think actually the brothers, but Zach is also involved in the crypto space with them. And he's running around with Eric. So I think actually the Witkoff sons are doing this. Um, there's no reason why Witkoff still has a job, and that's kind of I think we all continue to wonder why Witkoff is in a position of trust in this administration. He's gotten nothing done. He's charged with two things: the Russia conflict with Ukraine and this sort of Middle East issue. He's done nothing in 5 months, arguably made the situation far worse. So why is he still in his position? But also, why is he bailing out Hamas at this point? And it's a question that I think we all need to ask. But the second takeaway from this, very importantly for anyone who's watching this, who has a vested interest, who's especially those who are on the right, political right in the United States, this should be a wake-up call. That I think that one of the things that I've been trying to get through in the last month plus is we've seen a number of moves in the Middle East by the Trump administration, which have put Israel in a terrible security situation. Israel has clearly been a very secondary concern here. And I hear two things from people who are diehard Trump supporters. The first is, well, you know, it makes sense. He's the president of the United States, not the president of Israel. And absolutely, right? Hold that consistent position. He has political calculus when it comes to the United States. Therefore, this second statement should be completely untrue, right? It's 4D chess playing the long game, right? We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. It's all going to work out in the end. Trump loves Israel. Okay, that's inventing motivations for politicians where motivations are not existing. When we start to invent this is not politicians are not Jesus, right? When you outsource your critical thinking skills to blind faith in a politician who's not your prime minister, who does not have a fiduciary duty to cover you, right? You are outsourcing critical thinking and your own thought processes to mere faith in what you hope is taking place. Everything that has been shown in front of our eyes, the statements from the administration, is that they're headed down a terrible Middle East policy with Iran, right? They've done a complete 180-degree turn from the first administration. First administration was maximum pressure campaign, starve and choke Iran, and isolate them. None of these moves isolate Iran. All of them seek to elevate them to a player to negotiate with them, and relieving sanctions in exchange for anything short of total dismantling of their entire nuclear program, probably bombing the nuclear program, is pointless. Right? And so I don't know why it's so difficult.
We have them on the rope too.
We do. It makes no sense. All of these moves are being made at a time when there's extreme pressure on Iran. And by the way, it's extreme pressure on Iran and Hamas because Israel has done the dirty work. Right? Israel has done this for 600 days. They've defenestrated, they literally castrated Hezbollah. They did some good work in Syria. They've decimated Hamas's political and military leadership. Israel has done this work. And the United States is coming in at the last moment. There's no way to reframe this. It's a betrayal. It's taking advantage of the hard work, the bloodshed, the sacrifice that Israel has made in this region to put itself in a safer security footing. It's taking advantage of that, and it's kicking dirt in the face. And it's wrong, and we should call it out.
Make the argument for the other side. Why do you think they want to do it?
I don't understand the argument. The other side includes a logical fallacy, right? The only way to see this in a positive light is if you truly think Trump is playing some sort of four-dimensional chess, right? But that involves disbelieving what your eyes have been telling you for a very long time, and I don't play that game, right? So the reality of why this is going on, let's say that the true reality is Trump needs political wins. He needs political victories, right? Trump wants to be. He has a couple of considerations here. The first is that he's a peace making president. That's his legacy. That's what he wants to be, his legacy. He doesn't like America being dragged into direct conflict. Right? He'll do anything to avoid that, to protect his perfect ball game. He's pitching a perfect game, in his opinion, on getting the U.S. involved in more direct conflict. He's the only president. He ran on this as the only president in our lifetimes not to involve the United States in a direct conflict. He's extremely protective of that. The second is its political expediency. He wants W's, right? He really wants the W. And this, to him, he'll spin it. He'll spin a deal, right? He'll spin the deal and he'll say that it's peace in our time, but we know that's not true because Iran doesn't even hold to any agreements. They've been not only enriching tritium, they not only enrich tritium, which is only military, bomb capabilities or use during the JCPOA, but in contradiction to not Noam's Tulsi Gabbard's statements that they stopped the nuclear program, right? The nuclear weaponization program. The Austrians have released evidence completely to the contrary of this, right? They are marching towards a nuclear weapon, and Trump is kicking the can down the road in a very JCPOA fashion of saying, like for a period of time, we trust them. You don't trust terrorists, right? That's what made Trump term one, Trump term one. And this trust of terrorists, it's bewildering, but it's not when you take a look at it from the political side. Trump needs victories, but he needs victories for a couple more reasons than a lot of people might. If you zoom out, he needs victories because the tariffs have failed. The tariffs have really roiled the markets. The markets don't like them. They're about to be, in fact, they were struck down in the courts today, and they're going to continue to be struck down in the courts like this. Trump actually had a window of opportunity in order to use the tariff threats as a negotiating leverage point. He didn't. He stuck to them even when Vietnam came and said they would lower their tariffs to 0 if the U.S. did as well. The U.S. actually gave him the middle finger and we're staying at 10. Trump missed the boat on the tariffs. That window is gone, and now it's going to be struck down in the courts and it's going to stay dead. Trump needs political capital now. And so victories is what he's looking for. He's looking for that Chamberlain slip of paper to come back and say, peace in our time, I did it. This is wrong, bad policy.
And it's also peace in our time as long as our time is just the Trump presidency. It's not peace in our time that's sustainable 5 to 10 years down the road even. And I think Israel learned these lessons the hard way. This is exactly what they did in Lebanon, Gaza, and really in Judea and Samaria as well. When you kick the can down the road, the bad news doesn't smell better over time. And as you see, Israel is now paying a very high price, and I'm definitely nervous about what it will mean for the United States. Contrary to what Dave Smith says, Iran is a major threat to the United States. It's a
huge
big threat to ambassadors, to American citizens, American national security, and of course, Israeli national security. It's not good to have a nuclear weapon potentially fired at you.
An ICBM
So
doesn't.
contrary to what Dave Smith says,
An ICBM is not useful to hit Israel. An ICBM is useful to hit the United States. Right? An ICBM, they don't need an ICBM to hit Israel.
Correct. And the other thing that's just strange here, again, I'm going to harp on it, is I don't know how Israel agrees to a ceasefire which prioritizes 18 deceased bodies ahead of living hostages. It just does not make ethical sense. This is not to say that I don't want deceased people returned immediately, but to prioritize a proper burial over the return of a living, breathing person that might die at any minute in enemy hands is nonsensical.
It's not only nonsensical, but we got to start being realistic in the expectation of the return of hostages. There is no incentive for Hamas to return all hostages. They will never, if they retain governing power in the Strip, they will hold hostages to assure that they retain that governing power. Right? That is.
Yeah, but AJ, actually, I disagree with you. I think that Hamas actually has an immense incentive to return the hostages, because I believe that once all of the hostages are returned, the political, social, and military will to continue forward will collapse. And that's not to say that Israel shouldn't finish the job and that that's the right decision, but I don't think that Netanyahu can keep a coalition around when all of the hostages are back and keep reservists motivated to continue fighting after the hostages return. So I originally thought that perhaps it was in Hamas's interest to keep the hostages, but now I really think it's the opposite.
No, I think they'll keep one or two always. I don't see how they don't. It's kind of like a Shalit sort of deal. They have immense value in the future, even if dead. I, I I just don't see it. They're extremely cynical people. They don't play by political calculus. If they were smart politically, they'd have taken this deal immediately from Witkoff. Israel's agreed, to it, and they're still trying to negotiate over it. Um, they're extremely cynical, power hungry people. They don't think in terms of political expediency, just in terms of what they know they can get away with. So I guess we'll agree to disagree on this one for sure. But I think that it has been extremely detrimental.
Wait, by the way, we don't necessarily disagree. I'm just saying what the incentives would be
Hmm.
internally
I hear
in
you.
Israel. I'm not of the belief that Hamas is going to return all of the hostages. I also don't think that Hamas genuinely knows where all of the hostages are located. That's based on conversations I've had within Israel. But aside from that,
I agree with you. I agree with you.
you and I agree about what might happen, but I just think that they're misreading the Israeli public in the sense that if all of the hostages were returned, I think many of these issues that have been bubbling over the surface, under the surface, and now seeping through, would break into public.
Yeah, I don't disagree on where the hostages are held, and ultimately, it's very hard to pinpoint the. There's only one thing that you can actually ever know about crazy genocidal nut jobs is that they not only don't play by your rules, but at the end of the day, they cannot be trusted. That's the one golden rule. They will lie to you to get what they want, and they don't hold your values. I think though that if slash when this goes through, because it will most likely go through, and then the Iran deal as well. There really needs to be a reckoning here about how willingly we were able to swallow the last month plus. Right? There were a lot of negative moves made against Israel in the last month plus, and the people who have voices within our community really, really swallowed that. They didn't. Not only did they not voice disagreement with it, but people were left relatively uninformed about what was going on. And I do not understand. It's a very anti-Jewish value to peg blind faith to countries that you could be kicked out of, right? And so I just do not understand the compulsion to say that a politician did something positive 7 years ago, or 8 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and therefore he has your sudden best interests at heart, right? He just loves you. Right? That's just not the Jewish experience. The Jewish experience is that we have a negative, um, a negative association with becoming comfortable and complacent in a place, and then that place becoming very hostile towards us. And that's exactly what we've seen post 10/7. A lot of Jews felt very safe in the United States. Right? Post 10/7, I think a lot of attitudes have shifted, a lot of attitudes have changed, but we really need to reckon with what has happened here and realize that Jews are not a political concern. Right? And I think the misunderstanding is somewhat of a bit of a Jewish narcissism that people think that like because we're right, other people will see that we're right, or not just that they'll see that we're right, that they'll do right by us. Right? We're not a political concern. We're less than 2% of the electorate concentrated in like New York and Los Angeles. Those places aren't electorally swinging, right? And so when people are saying,
And Miami.
and my still not politically swinging. So when people say, "Oh, you know what? This is bad, but it's probably not bad because I believe he loves us, or I believe they're going to do the right thing." No other minority group thinks like that. No other minority group gets political wins through that sort of mentality. It's a weak mentality. No one's going to give us stuff, right? We have to demand it and make our voice heard. So I'm very, very disappointed. I am disappointed someone in the Laura Loomers of the world. I mean, she's quite extreme, but very hooked into the Trump,
No,
machinations there.
Laura's come out pretty strong, I thought.
Um, she should be raising holy hell about this. She's probably the closest person who has right on this today. It should be scorched earth, right? This should be absolutely scorched earth. But I don't have too much about, like, I'm not going to say I'm not saying she's bad. I'm just saying that we are our own political concern, right? Jews are our own political concern, and we have to fight like hell when things are going wrong like this. Otherwise, things don't get better. Now, my far bigger concern is with the online audience, right? The online audience has been absolutely lied to in the last month plus as to what's been going on, right? A lot of them, if you ask what happened with the Houthis, they have no clue, right? But if you were to say, like, hey, Trump said that they were going to bomb the Houthis with Israel, and Israel did a lot of the dirty work and bombed the crap out of the Houthis, and the purpose was to restore all shipping in the Red Sea, right? And to basically bomb them into submission. And then a quarter of the way through that mission, after Israel bombed the crap out of them, the Houthis told them, we won't touch American ships, but we're basically going to still lob missiles into Tel Aviv over Saudi airspace while you're visiting Saudi Arabia. And Trump was like, sure, go ahead, right? That's wrong. It's a bad move. And no one knew about, like, no one online, whenever I asked them, no one knew because no one was talking about it. The Iran deal, the U.S. was clearly open to domestic uranium enrichment for weeks until Senate Republicans tried to force that. Said they won't sign a treaty without it. And all indications today are that's exactly where the negotiations are going. Right? And most people, no clue. They'll say, oh, Trump said on one afternoon that there was no nuclear weapons. Iran couldn't get a nuclear weapon.
He's also been saying that Putin has 2 weeks. He's been saying that for...
He's been saying that for 6 months, man. Right? He was going to end the war in 24 hours because Putin had to come to the table. Right? The degree of willingness to which we've accepted this is a political problem for us, and we really need to wake up and become our own political concern. I genuinely do believe that's playing into the part of the reason why New York is about to elect a jihadist mayor, right? Like, this is, I mean, we've suddenly woken up to this. There's been a lot of noise in the last few weeks about this, but if we were politically more not motivated, but politically more orchestrated, we probably could have tried to head this more off at the pass before he got such a foothold. He's statistically tied with Cuomo, from my understanding of things, and in a ranked choice system that actually could be very, very bad, right? Being tied statistically with someone in a ranked choice system can actually mean that you're drastically in front of them because the second choices are scattered on many people's ballots, but they could be concentrated for second choice on this one person who's statistically tied for first. So people need to be very, very aware that a jihadist is potentially going to become the mayor of New York City. Right? These are bad political times for us, and we haven't done nearly enough.
If only there was one more gala dinner, I'm sure that would get it done. AJ, thanks as always for joining.
You bring up just one last thing before you go, because you've been hitting on this. You've been hitting on this as well, and I just want to second you on it. Jewish efforts and funds go almost too much is spent externally, right? Far too much is spent on other people, right? To try to either bring them over to our side or combat anti-Semitism or whatever you're going to do, right? It's feel-good money, but it's not impactful money, right? And so when we talk about dinners and giving and all sorts of stuff, absolutely true that there's huge mismanagement in the giving space. And we have to find some way to say, okay, these are the core issues that are really important and impactful to the community. One of them is political organizing, right? Because we don't get the legislative wins, we don't get the foreign policy wins if we're not a concentrated political force. Political organizing, Chabad does this amazingly, by the way. Chabad is very, very good at political organization, and a lot of the ultra-Orthodox communities are very good. That's how they get, black standards in New York.
Wait, but Chabad, no one's in... Yeah, but nobody's in politics.
No. It's not. They don't need to be in politics. I just mean that they can vote as a block or push through what they want. People listen, and we're somewhat scattered, right? And I think the ultra Orthodox have done this incredibly well in New York, which is why they have loose educational standards as a carve out, because they get certain legislative pork thrown at them, and they all vote as a block for who's going to give them that legislative pork. The ultra-Orthodox do this in Israel, right? They organize politically very well and vote as a bloc. Jews are all over the place. We don't seem to know what we want, right? So political organization is something quite important. The second is Jewish education, right? Jewish education is quite important. There shouldn't be a single dollar spent to bring someone to Auschwitz if a kid can't afford to be a Jew in a Jewish day school. Absolutely, you're losing an actual yid in favor of taking someone to anti-Semite Disney World.
A rabid anti-Semite who's going to go hang out with Jake Owens or something and thinks that
Crazy,
Jews control the entire world. We
crazy.
have to bring him to Auschwitz.
You know what the better move
At the
would
end
have
of the
been?
day,
The better move would have been to name a scholarship for a Jewish day school in that dude's name, right? That's what would have been a better move.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think also that so many of the fundamental institutions, I'm not going to name names this second, but they've been taken over by this Tikkun Olam gang, which, while it might be well-intentioned, you miss the point because you have to take care of yourself, then you have to take care of your family, you have to take care of your community, and stop worrying about everything in all of the outer boroughs of New York. Let's first make sure that we're settled and you have priorities in line.
Look at the
So
ADL.
you and I agree on that.
Look at the ADL. This is an absolute disgrace. The guys.
The ADL. Did you see Jonathan Greenblatt when he went on TV and he says, George Floyd, may his memory be a blessing? Listen, you might have different opinions on what happened to him. You might have different opinions on Derek Chauvin. You might be appalled by police behavior, brutality toward minorities. What exactly about George Floyd's life should be a blessing?
Not just that, it's virtue signaling. It's indicative of a mental problem that we have, that our first impulse is to fight for others before ourselves, right? Just say George Floyd, right? And then go on to say what we need. You're wasting, I don't even understand this compulsion, but that's what's led, right? In the early days post 10/7, my first post, which was highly controversial, was I knocked Hillel Fold. Because Hillel said, and I like Hillel Fold, but Hillel said something about like being shocked by anti-Semitism. And my response was, you're shocked by anti-Semitism? Your brother was stabbed to death, right? Like your brother was murdered, right, by an anti-Semite. How could you be closed? How could your eyes be closed to anti-Semitism? Anti-Semitism is a worldwide phenomenon. People didn't like that I kind of responded in that way, but that was my legitimate reaction: is how are people so blind to the reality of anti-Semitism? And the reality of the whole situation is organizations completely failed. The ADL completely failed. If there's an explosion of anti-Semitism post 10/7, that was your job, bro, right? Like, what was your job during the peacetime, right? To go to dinners, to be a political chameleon?
You mentioned Hillel, and you're going to talk about Israeli influencers, but we don't have to go on too long. But the other harder truth to understand is the amount of BS that's being put out by some of the ministries from Israel and these horrible strategies over the last couple of decades, where it's basically someone would come and say, you're committing genocide, and we respond,
Drip
oh,
irrigation.
what about drip irrigation? And what about our pride parades in Tel Aviv?
Democracy.
It's nonsense. It's crazy. And it's not good or effective marketing if you're going to market. So
crazy.
That entire strategy is just horrible. They all get an F. And just because you have 1,000 Jewish people in West Palm Beach who like Facebook posts does not mean that it's a good strategy.
Right. It's insane.
And it's, to me, it's insane that there hasn't been a thorough accounting of what's actually going on and saying, okay, this has to be turned over. We can publish as many books as we want. You can send Douglas Murray and Spencer into wherever you want. At the end of the day, the strategy cannot be that every single military expert who says something remotely nice about Israel gets an award and is paraded from UJA to every other event. That's just not a good strategy.
Well, it's actually counterproductive. It's counterproductive.
Yes,
because it doesn't raise our own people. It doesn't raise our own people to be able to argue. If you credential certain people to argue for you, you create a generation of intellectually lazy, non-debaters, right? Who just, they'll clip things from Douglas Murray and they'll repeat the talking points that they might hear, but it remains surface level, right? When we promote only one or two people and we say, these are the guys. They're amazing. Yes, Douglas Murray is amazing, right? Kemp is amazing, or Spencer.
Why can't someone be amazing? Why do we have to give them an award, like the Jerusalem Award? Or I'm making that up, but
For doing the right
why do they
thing.
have to get an award just because they see the truth?
Right, exactly.
Just say, listen to this report. Okay, great. Why do we have to start worshiping? And I love Douglas Murray. I love Richard Kemp. Spencer's awesome. These people are intellectual heavyweights. But this whole idea that you're giving an award, I mean, do you see the United States giving an award to a historian who writes a nice book just because it says something nice about a president? I mean, it's crazy.
It is. It is insane. Well, they give awards to people who write things that disparage the country.
This is true. But I just conceptually how people think about these things is it's really shallow, and I wish people would listen, but I don't know if they will. But I just see this and I'm like, why in the world is this happening?
It makes no
And
sense.
it actually undermines the case because you're trying to say here you have a neutral observer, and then they say, oh, this person's on like a paid PR tour. I'm like, no, he's not. And then you look at where he spoke, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's on a paid PR tour. Okay. It's crazy.
Yeah. Nuts.
So a little bit of field there, but AJ, I do appreciate it. We should do this more often, and hopefully good things happen soon.
Thank you very much.